Are you progress? Today's webinar will cover Find Transfer Success with the new Texas Transfer Framework. So a little bit of background. Over the years, tens of thousands of students apply to transfer from a community college to a four-year university. And as we all know, transferring from a community college to a four-year university can bring on a lot of different challenges. We're going to share with you some of those challenges that transfer students are facing and how the new Texas Transfer Framework was developed to help these students find success in higher education. Our guest speakers today will discuss how counselors and advisors can use the Texas Transfer Framework to help students reduce excess hours, time to their degree, as well as costs associated with post-secondary education. So I know we may have a number of folks on the line who are new to us, so I wanted to take just a minute to introduce Texas OnCourse. With Texas OnCourse, all Texas students, no matter where they come from or where they're headed, have a plan for success after high school. All of the materials that we produce and at all of the trainings that Texas OnCourse hosts, we always begin with this end in mind, that the work we are doing is to help our students have a valuable plan after high school. Texas OnCourse is a state-funded initiative designed to improve college and career advising and readiness across the state. We were created at the request of the Texas legislator that works in partnership with the governor's tri-agency workforce initiative. So all of these organizations work together to connect education and industry in Texas. The users of our tools include middle and high school counselors, teachers, administrators, and community-based organizations that focus on post-secondary success. We also offer a lot of resources for our students and their families that are free. So a few things, as I mentioned, all of our webinars are recorded, so this one's already being recorded. The recording will be sent out to all of our registrants. So if you know a colleague that was not able to make it this morning that registered, no worries, they will receive the recording as well. And of course, you can always share our webinars and resources as you feel fit. We also have all of our upcoming and previous webinars posted on our webpage. When you have a moment or some free time, feel free to browse some of our previous topics as well. All right, so again, welcome. We are excited to spend this Tuesday morning with you. To give you a quick overview of today's session, we will be introducing ourselves, and then Ashley McKenzie will cover our resource spotlight, the Texas Transfer Framework module within the Academy. And then our guest speaker today, Elizabeth Mayer, welcome. We'll dive deeper into the Texas Transfer Framework, and Lauren Disher will follow up with some ways to support the students and staff at your campus. We will also have some time at the end of this webinar for some Q&A. So again, please add any of your questions into that Q&A box. My name is Andrea Panter. I am the Senior Network Coordinator here at Texas OnCourse. I started my education career a little over 15 years ago as a special education teacher with Teach for America in Houston, Texas. From there, I worked at a nonprofit in Austin Partners in Education, as a curriculum specialist and a math program manager. And I now have the privilege of working with Ashley, Elizabeth, and Lauren at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board.
Good morning. My name is Ashley McKenzie, and I started my career in education about 18 years ago as a high school social studies teacher. I have worked in high schools, at the college level as a college admission counselor, and then most recently, before joining the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, I worked as a high school counselor and a high school, college, and career counselor. And so I am excited to join you guys today and share some of our resources.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Mayer, and I have been working in higher education for about 15 years now. I actually started my career at the coordinating board as an intern in 2007 and spent several years at the coordinating board, then moved to the University of Texas system for about 6 years and have been back here at the agency since about 2020. So I'm very excited to talk to you about some of our exciting work that's been going on.
Hello, good morning. My name is Lauren Disher, and I'm the Professional Learning Coordinator here at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. I joined the team in February. So February 1st is when I started. And prior to that, I was the college and career advisor at a high school here in Austin, Texas. And I'm excited to be here today. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Great. And so we are going to go ahead and hop right into the resource spotlight, the Texas Transfer Framework module. Thank you, Ashley.
Great. So today in our webinar, Elizabeth is going to share with you a ton of really great information about the new Texas Transfer Framework. After we are done today, we encourage you to access our Texas Transfer Framework module, which you'll see on the next slide. This module is currently available online through a link that's accessible to everyone. If you are familiar with Texas OnCourse and you have used our academy in the past, it will be there eventually, but currently it is it's available through the link, and I believe that that'll get shared in the chat with you. So in this module, you will learn about the challenges that are facing Texas transfer students, why the transfer framework was established, how it was developed, and then how the framework is laid out. So you'll also get an opportunity to practice responding to some real life scenarios that will help you test your knowledge and make sure that you're understanding how to apply it in your advising sessions. So on the next slide, you'll see just a little bit more information about the objectives that we try to cover in this module. You'll be able to identify the need for the Texas Transfer Framework, some of the components, and get practice in learning how to help support your students and how you can also help them meet their core complete requirements by completing the Texas Transfer Framework. So currently, like I said, that this module is available online through a standalone website, but eventually it will be added to our Texas OnCourse Academy. So if you already have an account there, it will be coming soon. So take a look at the website and then also check back to the Academy for more information later. And if you want additional, you can go to the next slide, sorry. If you want additional information about the Texas Transfer Framework, more information and links to some of the curriculum, field of study curriculum are available on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board website. And so now Elizabeth will share with us some more information about how to apply this in your work.
All right. So good morning again. So I'm excited to be here to discuss the Texas Transfer Framework that we have developed and implemented over the last several years. So this effort would not have been possible without the partnership of our higher education institutional partners, as well as the faculty. This, of course, impacts students who, for you all, for this audience, I know you all are likely counseling students who are planning to take dual credit courses, or and the intent is really to give you guys some insight as they complete high school and they move on to college. You know, how are those credits potentially going to transfer for them? So for this presentation, I'm going to provide an overview of data and why this effort is important, and then give an overview of the process that was used to develop the framework, and lastly, the details of the framework. So I always think that data is a good place to start to kind of give a grounding of like, why does this matter? So just as an FYI, this slide does not include dual credit students. So these are students who have completed their high school experience and are beginning college. So if you look at the slide from left to right, you can see what we have is the start and stay students. So these are students who typically start at a university and will complete any university. The transfer students are students that are accumulating credit through a community college and then intend to transfer to a university to eventually achieve a bachelor's degree. So you can see here that the start and stay students, when you look at people who are starting at a university, they have a relatively high completion rate of 84%. And then when you compare that to transfer students who intend to get a bachelor's degree, who started at a community college, that's only about 66% of students. So you can see there, this data I think is important because it highlights an 18 percentage point difference. So you can see that not all students are really completing that bachelor's degree, even though they have transferred and that's their intent. So next slide. So now I'm just going to move on to talk about the prior fields of study. So the fields of study was put into place by the legislature in 1997. And so the fields of study are really intended to be a grouping of courses by discipline that facilitate students who transfer are intended to provide clear pathways for students. So if a student is considered field of study complete, they don't have to take any lower division courses for their major. So it will ensure that they don't have to retake courses, which can cost students time and money. But as you can see here from this slide, the usage of the students who have been considered field of study complete is not very high. So you only have 2019, which is the most recent data we have, shows that only 5% of students who transferred from a community college to university are really field of study complete. Next slide. So this is kind of showing a contrast in the students that are core complete. So as you can see here, there's a significant number of students who have completed the core. So only roughly 5% of students were field of study complete, but you can see here about 47% of students who transferred from a community college to university were core complete. Next slide. So basically, I just wanted to give you guys a grounding of where we were in terms of students who were not having those lower division discipline courses, which are going to be really important to facilitate their transfer and potentially minimize excess semester credit hours and time to degree. So I'm now going to provide an overview of the Improving Transfer Work Group and explain the process that was undertaken to develop the new framework. Next slide. So Senate Bill 25, which became law in 2019, included several important provisions to improve transfer in Texas. So most notably, a requirement for institutions to implement a recommended course sequence for every certificate and degree program, earlier filing of degree plans, and new reporting requirements on non-transferable credit. So based upon the momentum of SB 25 and the priority of transfer by our commissioner, a small work group of stakeholders was convened to continue the work on transfer. So the work group eventually became known as the Improving Transfer in Texas Work Group. Next slide. So the work group was composed of 5 community college representatives and 5 university representatives. And the work group met weekly for 90 minutes on Zoom calls. So they really dug into kind of what the challenges were with transfer, looking at some of the data we provided and things like that. Next slide. So initially, the work group really focused on learning about other states that have implemented successful transfer initiatives. So for example, we met virtually with representatives from California to learn about their associate degree in transfer. We also met with officials from Georgia to hear about their new Nexus transfer degree programs. And our intent was really to hear about lessons learned in those states that could be applied to our experience here in Texas. In addition, the work group also requested different types of data from coordinating board staff, which help inform those discussions. And then the group also spent time reviewing the existing resources that are intended to support transfer, including the Texas Core Curriculum, the Lower Division Academic Course Guide Manual, or ACGM, the Field of Study Curriculum, and also the Texas Common Course Numbering System, or TCCNS. So after hearing from other states and looking at different data, the group kind of began their work by developing some core principles, which needed to be the foundation of the new Texas Transfer Framework. So I'm just going to provide a quick snapshot of those principles. So the first principle was shared responsibility. So both community colleges and universities share equal responsibility for an efficient transfer framework. The second principle is transparency in student-centric academic pathways. So the transfer framework must be seamless and transparent for students. The third principle was optimizing courses applying upon transfer. So the transfer framework must optimize the number of courses and credits applicable to the major upon transfer to a university. The fourth principle was process. So the transfer framework shall be developed through a transparent process that involves an institution's participation in a formal venue to identify and endorse mechanisms for efficient transfer. And then the last principle is full-scale implementation. So the mechanisms of the transfer framework must be adhered to by all institutions. A formal venue will be sustained for a post-implementation oversight. So that just gives you an idea of all of the things that the work group went through. Next slide. So after nearly 7 months of weekly Zoom calls and all over 25 meetings of the work group, the group reached a consensus on the elements of the new Texas Transfer Framework. The work group turned things over to the coordinating board staff, and we worked on the rules to implement the new framework. In January of 2021, the coordinating board staff submitted the proposed rules to the Texas Register. And after comments were received and considered, revisions were made to the rules, and then the final rules were implemented for the new Texas Transfer Framework, which were adopted by the coordinating board in March of 2021. Next slide. So this new framework is really intended to optimize the courses students take and ensure that students who complete 60 semester credit hours will transfer to university with junior standing in the major, and that they won't need to take additional lower division courses for their major. This, I think, was a really important point for the work group and is really at the main point of what we're trying to accomplish with this work. Next slide. So I'm now going to go over the revised fields of study that the work group developed and that were put into our rules. Next slide. So based upon the recommendations of the Improving Transfer Workgroup in Texas, that we developed these rules. So what are the details of the framework? So what we did is we shifted what the old fields of study look like. So now the field of study curriculum has 3 component areas. So the first component are what we are calling the selected discipline specific Texas core curriculum courses. So these have an unspecified number of hours because the hours will be determined based upon the recommendations of the discipline specific subcommittee, which I will get to shortly, which will include only those courses relevant for the major course of study. So just for example, so if your discipline agrees that statistics is the appropriate math that should fill a core requirement, then that's what the subcommittee should consider in basically what should be included for that specific component area. The next component is the discipline foundation courses, and these are to be a sort of courses within the major course of study, consisting of up to 12 semester credit hours. And these will also be developed by the discipline-specific subcommittee. And then lastly are what we're calling the directed electives. And so these are to be a set of courses within a major course of study consisting of at least 6 semester credit hours specific to each general academic teaching institution or university and prescribed by the faculty of the university. So I want to note that the directed electives will be submitted to the coordinating board by each receiving university and may include lower division courses critical for student success in that major. And so a student is now considered field of study complete when entering the university with all 3 of the blocks complete. So the university must substitute that block of courses for the receiving institution's lower division requirements for the degree program for the corresponding field of study curriculum. So I want to point out that a student may still take lower division courses after transfer to fulfill non-major related requirements. But if they've completed the field of study, they legally are not required to take any major courses, lower division major courses upon transfer. A student is considered field of study incomplete when entering with only partial completion of any of those blocks. However, the university must grant academic credit in the major for each field of study course completed. Next slide. So this is just a visual that we worked on with the work group that kind of helped give a framing. I think for some people the text can be overwhelming, but this is just like what we typically call like the 3 components or the 3 buckets of what this new field of study looks like. Next slide. So now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the new governance structure that was also put in place as part of the framework and essential for this effort. I just wanted to point out one of the challenges that the work group identified was that there was not a lot of buy-in with the prior fields of study. And so developing this new governance structure was really important for them because we do want to see the usage of the fields of study increase. We want more than 5% of students once they transfer to be considered field of study complete. So this new governance structure is one of the ways in which we're trying to get to that aspect of buy-in from folks. Next slide. So the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee, or TTAC, advises the commissioner on the development of the courses in the field of study curriculum. They also oversee the development of the field of study curriculum through the use of discipline-specific subcommittees that will report back to the TTAC. So the discipline-specific subcommittees, so these subcommittees are, what happens typically is the TTAC directs that they want to have a new field of study for a specific discipline. So if they decide we want to have a new subcommittee for history, what we do is we send out nominations to all the institution's chief academic officers and request faculty to participate in the development of revised field of study. And so the folks, the faculty come together typically for about 2 days. We have 4 hours on the first day and 3 to 4 hours on the second day, and they meet virtually and they decide which courses need to be in each of those component areas. After that time period, hopefully we have a revised field of study. For the directed electives, so although these are determined by the actual universities, the subcommittee does provide recommendations that are sent to each of the universities as the recommendations of directed electives, but the universities is their discretion whether they want to choose those directed electives that were decided by the subcommittee or not. So continuing about the TTAC's work, so these, the advisory committee is composed of an equal number of members from public community colleges and universities. The majority of the members are faculty who currently teach undergraduate courses and are engaged in transfer policy development. And then something else that the work group felt pretty strongly about is also having students participate on the TTAC as well as academic advisors. So we have 2 ex officio students, one from a community college, one from a university, and 2 ex officio academic advisors, also one from a community college and one from a university. And then the TTAC members also serve staggered terms up to 3 years, and they can serve consecutive terms. Next slide. So this is kind of the status of where we are. we started meeting in 2021 as when TTAC was developed via the rules, and when they had their first meeting and decided which disciplines to pursue first. The disciplines are based upon data that we provide to the advisory committee members. What the thinking is, they want to have the most students impacted done first. So we typically provide a list of all of the majors in terms of the number of students that are transferring and then the number of students that are completing by discipline type, so they can decide which ones are going to have the most impact. So far we have completed the entire process for business administration and criminal justice. So those are currently approved. And then sociology, social work, political science, like either this week or next week, those will likely be approved as well. And then psychology and nursing, these were approved by TTAC. They were posted to the Texas Register for public comment. We have not received any public comment. And so in the coming weeks, we will likely be working with the universities to collect those directed electives. And then biology. So biology had some challenges. They decided, the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee decided to table the recommended field of study for biology and requested a work group be convened to discuss how to move forward with STEM disciplines that typically require a significant number of lower division coursework. There was not complete consensus on biology, so they've decided to kind of move forward with a work group to see if we need to think through a different kind of framework for STEM or disciplines that have a lot of lower division coursework. And then next is exercise science. That subcommittee met, but they decided that there were not sufficient number of courses in the academic course guide manual. So they paused their work, and we're about to convene an academic course guide manual work group so that they can potentially add courses that they could be used to develop their revised field of study. And then education is still in the process of meeting. They met earlier this in February, and they're going to be meeting later this month to hopefully finalize their work. And then at the last TTAC meeting, the group decided to pursue history, English, communications, computer and information sciences, and engineering. Computer and information sciences and engineering is that work group or that subcommittee will come together after the work group that's looking at the STEM fields and determining if the current framework works for those disciplines. So that will be done later. And then history and English and communications will likely be, those subcommittees will start meeting in the next couple of months. And that concludes my remarks on the Texas Transfer Framework.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We do have one question. We will be able to have some time for questions at the end as well, but Sandra Miller asked if are the FOSC courses based on TCCN?
So they're based on the ACGM. So any courses, it's written in rule that any courses that are part of the framework must be in that academic course guide manual. And when the discipline-specific subcommittees meet, we typically provide data on the current courses that are if they have an existing field of study, which most of the ones we have done had a field of study, we provide a list of courses and the number of community colleges and universities that are utilizing those courses currently and the number of students impacted or that have taken those courses.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. So now Lauren's going to share some ways you can use this information to support your students and staff.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. So yes, we're going to go ahead and talk about implementation. So now that we've learned all about the Texas Transfer Framework, we're going to talk about how you can maybe use the module within your educational practice and just things to keep in mind when you're working with those dual credit or early college high school students. Next slide. Excellent. So why does Texas need the Texas Transfer Framework? So one of the first reasons is students will no longer encounter issues when they transfer credits to college. So in 2020, over 69,000 courses were denied credit to about 17,000 students. And that information was actually taken directly from the Texas Transfer module. And it represents at least 25% of the students who transferred with college credit from a 2-year to a 4-year institution. So keep in mind, these are college students that we're talking about, but it's important to think about this kind of statistic when we're thinking about our dual credit and early college high school students, because of course they're taking those basic classes in high school, perhaps to then transfer to a 4-year university, or perhaps even pursue an associate's degree at a community college if they're taking dual credit courses. So completing the Texas Transfer Framework module can really help you assist your students who want to transfer all of their credits. And I'm specifically talking about your dual credit and early college high school students. So some of the things to think about and kind of keep in mind when you're working with your staff is to maybe integrate the module as part of a professional development day, reward your staff with PLCs or coffee or breakfast, and then perhaps giving them professional learning credit. So that's kind of one way to integrate that Texas Transfer Framework module into perhaps like a professional development day or something. So the infographic demonstrates like how students who start and then stop their degree, and that's that S and S students. So those students who start and then stop their degree still earn a degree in a shorter amount of time, about 5.5 years, than our transfer students who take about 7.5 years. So there's a big difference there. And next slide. Perfect. Okay. So how can you help your early college, high school, or dual credit students? So one of the things that we kind of kept in mind is just encourage your students to reach out to a counselor or advisor if they're struggling to complete a course. Create mandatory one-on-one meetings with your dual credit or early college, high school students, perhaps twice a year, just to discuss the classes that they're taking, their current satisfactory academic progress, and the classes that they want to take in the future. Keep track of early college, high school degree plans for those individual students. Perhaps share the plan with them and make sure that they understand that the classes that they're expected to take maybe have consequences if they fail that class or they drop one of those courses, because some classes are only offered during certain times within a semester, especially for those dual credit or ECHS students. Remember to also counsel your students, and I think this one's particularly important, about maintaining that satisfactory academic progress, or SAP, because students need to know that SAP includes their grade point average, completion rate, and maximum time frame, and that those students that are unable to maintain satisfactory academic progress may have issues with future like financial aid or transfer eligibility, which is huge. So a few ideas that can help your early college, high school, and dual credit programs. This is perhaps something that you already even implement within your school. Is perhaps like host meetings with those students and talk about the program and the requirements, stress how important they are and the responsibility around taking those dual credit or early college, high school classes, so that when they do graduate from high school and transfer to a 4-year university, or perhaps continue on at a community college, that the classes that they took in high school transfer successfully. That's what we really want to make sure that we do.
Thank you, Lauren. And now we have some time for some questions. Any comments, anything you learned today that you want to share in the chat, or maybe something that spurred a different idea that you're like, oh, I want to look more into this. Anything you'd love to share with the group? So we do have another question, from Lana. Will there be a FOSC for students who plan to study fine arts?
So that is really a decision of the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee. As I mentioned, we provide them the data and they determine which disciplines to pursue. So that is really their decision about which disciplines that they want to pursue moving forward.
Okay, and then from Shelley, we have, how will 2-year school's transcript the completed FOS?
I think that is something that we are still working through because it is a bit of a shift. Because I think for the core curriculum right now, they have to transcript it in a certain way based upon our rules, but we do not have the details of that in terms of how to transcript it in the current version of the rules.
Okay. And then her second question was, are there requirements for four-year schools to also transcript a completed field of study?
I don't think it is currently required for them to transcript it. They just need to make sure that when a student comes to them, that they're making sure that they're not having them take those other lower division courses for their major.
Thank you. Did anyone else have any other questions? And of course, if you think about them later, you can always email us. We'll be sending you our contact information as well.
Andrea, this is Ashley. Do you mind sharing the link to the H5P module in the chat? There was a question in the chat about that, and I don't have access to send. I can only send to hosts and panelists.
Yeah, no, it's okay. The link wasn't working, so we'll send it in our follow-up email.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course. And then, of course, don't forget to like and subscribe us on YouTube. So this is also another area where you can find our previous webinars as well as this one. And as I mentioned, yes, we'll be sending you links to all of the resources that we talked about today, as well as the recording and our slide deck. I did want to let you guys know about our next monthly webinar. So mark your calendars. We'll be introducing Abby, Texas's virtual advisor. Some of you may already be familiar with Abby, our virtual advising chatbot. Abby is backed by a team of trained advisors and was designed to support Texas students with post-secondary planning. And students can text Abby questions about college admissions, and so much more. And our high school seniors can also sign up to receive timely texts throughout the college admissions process, which we have found to be super helpful for them. So we hope you're able to join us on April 11th to learn more about how Abby supports your college and career efforts. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope we were able to answer your questions and you have a better understanding of Texas transfer framework. I think there's one more question. Oh, Sandra's saying thank you. You're welcome, Sandra. And we really do value your feedback and are continuously working on improving our webinar series to provide you the most up-to-date relevant information. So if you don't mind just taking literally 2 minutes, less than that, to scan the QR code and give us some of your feedback from our survey, we would really appreciate that. And again, as I mentioned, I will be sending out all of our webinar materials later this week. And we look forward to collaborating with you all again in April. Unless we don't have any other questions, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.